one and only Alan Brazil, who's been at talkSPORT now, we think, about 13 years, we're saying. When you went out, so we're not going to get through hardly much, so just very briefly, when you went out to the States, was that not the era where you had Bestie out there and Pele out there, and did you get to meet these players?
I did, actually. I got to know George fairly well. He was playing for Fort Lauderdale Strikers, and I was at Detroit Express. We used to play in the Silverdome, Pontiac Silverdome, which was beautiful. But the beauty for me was 18-19. The away games, you go to Vancouver one week, then you go down to San Diego, then you go to Houston, and then you go to Tampa Bay. You know, it was just magic. It was brilliant, honestly. And so many of the older players who were out there finishing their career off was great. And we ended up getting knocked out the playoffs by Fort Lauderdale. I scored. George got the winner. It was 1-1, I scored, and then George got the winner in overtime. So I ended up having a few drinks with him afterwards. And he said, don't you, son, you've got a good left foot, and where are you at? And he was chatting away. He was lovely. It was just great to meet him, you know. So Trevor Francis came out as well. Yeah.
Bobby Robson saying to Al, when you go over there, just calm yourself down. And he goes, who are you out there with? George Best. That's not a great combination.
But what happened was the final, I shouldn't really say this, but the final night, Trevor was over with some other good old players. I remember the goalkeeper from Norwich City, Steve Hardwick, was started at Newcastle. Sorry, not Norwich. Ian Davis was at Norwich, the fullback. And Steve Hardwick was Newcastle United and Oxford, and great lads. And we'd been out, and because I was young, I pallied with the American boys as well, who were a little bit fed up because they'd bring people, not so much me because I was young, but the older ones, and take their place. So there was a little bit of animosity there. So I used to pally about with them. And a little guy from Rio de Janeiro, Roberto, was a great left foot, cannon. And the last night we had, that was it. We were out. Bestie had knocked us out, and we're all going home the next day. And we, as you do, you never see you again. And a bit of a party, and then the party went on to the next day, and the next day, and eventually it was time to go home. And let's say I had a little skirmish with the law, but I got away with it. And I got on the plane home, and I remember we're flying over Heathrow, circling to land, and I'm not feeling great. And the two guys who were good pros, one of them had something like, he was. I could hear him saying to Ian Davis, "What are you going to do with the money?" He said, "I'm going to new kitchen, and I'm going to get my mum a car." "And what about you?" He said, "Well, extension, yeah, not a kitchen, but I'm going to have an extension that make the living room, and I'm going to get my car, and I'm going to get the wife something as well." And I thought, am I hearing things here? And to get out there after the Saturday night at the Royal Garden Hotel, I had no money after we'd won the cup final. So Eric Gates had lent me 40 quid. It's all he had in his pocket. I said, "Gatesy, I'm going to New York tomorrow. I need help." And he emptied his pockets and he gave me 40 quid. And he had the hump because he thought it was going to be sub, but he wasn't. Mick Lambert was sub. So he gave me 40 quid. And they looked at me and they said, "You feeling all right? You feeling better?" I says, "Not really." What you going to do all your dough? And I reached in my pocket and I had $80. And that was it.
40 quid, give it back at that stage. One more. Now, most of that Ipswich, loads of members of that Ipswich team, including for body doubles for Stallone and Kane, went out and made escape to victory with Pele, and Zumda was in there, wasn't he? The great Polish player, he was in that team, wasn't he?
Casimir Dania.
Yeah, he's dead as well.
He's dead now.
Yeah.
He died in a car crash.
But you turned down
Stallone,
escape to victory, didn't you?
Well, what happened was I was with Scotland. This was my first trip with Scotland. We were in Poland and Hungary. Poland in those days, a feast was cabbage soup, right? So I'd been out there for a few weeks, and then we came to Budapest where they actually shot Escape to Victory. And that was slightly better. You got scraggy chicken, and the chips were, it wasn't a nice time, but you were there to play football. I played a couple of games for Scotland, so by the time I got to Budapest and they said, "Would you like to stay on for another few weeks?" No. They didn't even have to ask me what it was. I went, "No, I'm going home." And then they told me about the film, and I thought, "Oh yeah, I'd heard about this." And all our boys, a lot of the Ipswich boys were coming out. It was fantastic. And in the end, I thought, no. And when I see it, and I came home, and when I see it every Christmas, I do laugh, and I do think I should have stayed. Russell Osman, when the bath crashes in, and they're building, the tunnel's ready, they're going to escape at half-time. And I think Russell Osman says, they're 2-0 down. "Boys, we shouldn't go yet, we can still win this, You fall off the chair, and then John Wark had one line, you say, "I'll take the top bunk." And they dubbed them, they got another voice to say.
Could have been you.
The Americans couldn't understand them. So when I see all that, I think, we should have stayed now, but I didn't.
Cheers.